So you want to get lean, and you want to get lean quick. The problem is most people put all this effort into diet for 8 weeks and come out of it a couple of kilos, or if you're still working old money, half a stone down. And it's not for lack of effort, it's because they're putting all that effort in the wrong place. They're focusing on the wrong things. But luckily for you, I'm going to show you how I got this transformation and how I got these transformations for my clients. And by the end of this video, you should go away with a list of things that you can start implementing as soon as tomorrow to start dropping fat. So before I get into the blueprint of how to get into the shape of your life, I need to set some expectations, because if this is your first time dieting properly, training like this, I don't want you to look at my after picture where I've been training for 15, 20 years in some form and think that you're going to achieve that by the end of 8 weeks. At least that's what I'm telling myself, because if you do, it'll be a right kick in the nuts. But on a serious note, before we get started, there is something that you need to do. In fact, no, 2 things that you need to do. The first one being to hit that subscribe button, because although it won't directly burn fat for you, watching my videos will increase the chances of you sticking to a diet.
60% of the time, it works every time.
And the second thing that's potentially as important as hitting that subscribe button is coming up with your reason why. I know it sounds wishy-washy, but hear me out, because there is a genuine reason for it. Because dieting hard for 8 weeks is, by its very definition, hard. So if you don't have a reason that you're doing it, something that will motivate you when it does get hard, the chances are you're not going to stick to it. And unfortunately, that is the reality for a lot of people that will watch this. Is they will start, they won't have a real reason, they'll just fancy dropping a bit of weight, and they will never actually stick to it because it will get hard. And that alone is not going to be enough to motivate you. So have a proper think about it. What do you actually want to achieve? Why do you want to do this? And don't put a weight on it, because no one actually wants to be a weight. Like, no one ever grew up thinking, I want to be X amount of kilos or stone or whatever. Think about the feelings. Think about that actual moment where it will all come together for you, whether that's walking around the pool with confidence, being able to take your top off. And it doesn't have to be strutting around showing off. It might be that you're on a sunbed and you can take your top off without having that worry of people staring at you. It could be fitting into a smaller dress size. It could be that when you sit down, your rolls don't show through your t-shirt. It could be that when you play football with your kids at the park, that you don't look out of place running about with a football shirt on because you can't see your chest. It can be anything. It can be completely personal to you. And I'd say the more personal, the more grounding emotion that is, the more chance you've got of sticking to that, because you've got an actual reason, something that you can envisage. And not only what is the reason for it, but what is that going to feel like once you get there? How good is it going to feel when you can take your top off on holiday without worrying about it? And again, you don't have to be strutting around the pool like a veiny little peacock. It can be something small, a little victory, just a lack of worry, just a moment where you can sit there and go, yeah, I'm there. But it wants to be something measurable. That is the one thing that will get you to stick to this more than anything else. And chances are, just me saying that is enough that you know that moment. You've already got that in your head, because that's what's got you to watch this video. So now we've got that, why 8 weeks? And it's because any more than that, and it becomes a concept, it's way off in the future, you haven't got a hard date, you're not running out of time. Any shorter, it's not going to be long enough to see any significant results. 8 weeks is the perfect amount of time. You can see the finish line from the start, you know it's a short sprint, it's doable, but you're also going to see real results. And by real results, I'm talking 5-6 kilo for the average guy, 4-5 kilo for the average woman. If you're a bit smaller, you're a bit leaner, obviously it's going to be less than that. If you're a bit bigger, you're a bit heavier, it's going to be bigger than that. So let's start with the biggest thing then, nutrition. Now, you know what a calorie deficit is. Everyone knows what a calorie deficit is. But just in case you've been sleeping under a rock and you don't know, a calorie deficit is in essence eating less than you burn. It is the thing that is in charge of ultimately fat loss or fat gain. I want to go a bit deeper than that, because I know 9 out of 10 people watching this are going to want as much off as quick as possible. So you want 4 kilos off by yesterday. Kilo by the end of the week is just not acceptable. But let's see what that actually looks like in reality, because a kilo of fat contains around 7,700 calories. So to lose a kilo per week, you need about 1,000, 1,100 calories deficit per day. When you consider the average male needs about 2,500 calories per day and the average female 2,000, that's suddenly not a lot of food. Now, some people are going to prefer to go hard and fast. I personally do, but others are going to prefer a slower, steadier approach. But the biggest reason that I tend to see people fall off is because they set the deficit too big. They try and diet too hard and they can't keep up with it. So you're probably wondering what all of these numbers are, how you set them up, where you get them from. Well, I've got a free deficit calculator, which I will put the link to in the bio. All you have to do is put your details in that, your height, your weight, your age. It'll ask you some questions about your lifestyle, about how much you move and stuff, and it will give you some options. So you can select how big you want the deficit to be, like whether you want to go really hard or whether you want to take it steady. Now, I would urge you to not go straight for the top option to push it as hard as possible, because that is not going to be for everyone. And remember, you can always make it harder later on if you find it too easy. But if the numbers still don't mean anything to you, I would recommend spending a few days just tracking what you eat now. Just eat completely normal, track it so you can see where your food actually is, so that you know what's going to be a realistic number for you to go down to. But the scale that I tend to use with clients as a realistic rate of loss is about 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week. That's what we're aiming for. Now, if you pause this and you use the deficit calculator, you'll have seen that it doesn't just ask for your weight and your age and things like that. It also asks about how much you move, how many steps you do, and how much exercise you do. Now, that's because the average steps for a UK adult is 3,000 to 4,000 per day. That will burn anywhere from 120 to 200 calories, depending on whether you're male, female, and whether you're 50 kilos or whether you're 120, 130 kilos. But if you can double that and get that to 7,000, 8,000, straight away, you're doubling that deficit without touching your food. Now, you don't have to go straight for the golden 10,000 because there is nothing magic about 10,000. It is just a made up number that's good to aim for. It's a nice round number. But if your steps right now are 3,000, that is going to be unrealistic. You're going to be walking around like Frodo Baggins trying to cross the Shire every night. What you want to do is try and build them into your day. This is the ultimate hack with steps and increasing your output. Build them in where you can. So park further away at the supermarket, or even walk to it if it's in walking distance. Take the stairs instead of the lift. As many as you can possibly build into your day, it's going to mean that you don't have to do them at the end. You're not going to think about it, and they will start to add up quite quickly. On top of that, they're also a lot more likely to become habitual. So you will continue putting these little things into action, and over time you will continue to burn more calories. And then there's your cardio, but I'm going to come on to that later, along with some other ways that you can increase your deficit without dropping your food, so make sure you stick around for that. First, I want to talk about training. So for this video, when I talk about training, I'm talking about resistance training, specifically for hypertrophy, so growing muscle tissue. Now, resistance training will do a lot of things for you. It's got a lot of benefits. Things like heart and cardiac health and looking after bone density, all these things that are going to protect you later on in life so that you can live longer. It's also going to release serotonin and dopamine, which are the feel-good hormones, so you're always going to feel better after. If you're one of those people that takes the stress of work home with you, if you can call in at the gym on your way, you're going to be doing something mindful, because if you're squatting, for example, you're not thinking about anything else other than squatting. So by the time you finish, you go home, you've completely forgotten about work, you've lost the mood that you were in, and you get to enjoy the time with your family a lot more. But the main thing that people are bothered about is you want to change the way you look. Chances are, if you're watching this video, that's your main priority. You might associate it with your weight, but you actually just want to look better. Now, the thing that's going to happen if you diet and you don't train, it's not going to have any negative impact on you losing body fat, but you're just going to become a smaller version of yourself. The thing that's going to change that, that's going to actively change how you look, is going to be adding some muscle mass. Now, I say that and people think I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Don't bullshit me. Bullshit. 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 Bullshit.
Arnold Schwarzenegger did not accidentally get too big. He did not wake up one morning and suddenly he was that size. That was a project over years and years and years with quite a lot of drugs. I've never known a person accidentally get too big. It's not how it works. But when people talk about toning up, they actually just mean adding muscle mass. It's not going to make you look anything like a bodybuilder. That's like saying kicking a football is going to turn you into David Beckham. Completely different realities. What it will do once you add some muscle is once you diet down and the fat is going or potentially is mostly gone, it's going to give you something to fill your skin back out. It's going to give you some shape and some definition. It's going to be the thing that stops you going from looking and feeling skinny to looking athletic, to looking healthy, to looking in shape. And on top of that, muscle burns significantly more energy at rest than fat does. So you're also going to get away with eating more without gaining any fat. But to stand the best chance of adding that muscle that after hearing all that you now so desperately want, you're gonna have to follow a structured training plan. You can't just be winging it or it's not gonna happen. And that's gonna be a separate video. But for now, what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description with like 25 training plans in that you can just have access to. There'll be something for everyone. It will be a starting point for you. So by this point, you've now got your nutritional targets, your steps, and your training sorted. So let's go into the diet side of things. So if you've already used the deficit calculator, you will have seen that there's a diet builder on the back end of that. Now you can use that to give you some ideas, to give you some inspiration. I wouldn't want to use it for every meal. And even if you have used that, I would still watch this section, because considering how important nutrition is when it comes to fat loss, it will dwarf everything else. So you want to ensure that you've got enough knowledge that you are fully in control of that. So let's start then with your targets and what they're made up of. So you've got protein, which I know you've heard of. This is super important. It's responsible for tissue regeneration. That includes all tissue, including muscle mass. It's the reason that you will retain muscle mass when you're dieting. It will stop you from using that muscle as energy and make sure that you're using fat instead. So we need to make sure that protein is up there where your target's set. And then we've got dietary fats. So these are responsible for your hormonal well-being typically. So your mood, hair, skin, sleep, for ladies, time of the month. And to be clear, dietary fat is not the same as subcutaneous fat. Eating dietary fat will not make you fat, and cutting out dietary fat will not make you lose fat on its own. And then you've got carbohydrates, which is essentially just the easiest form of fuel for your body. It's also the best macronutrient because it contains bread and cereal and biscuits and all the best tasting stuff. But the deficit calculator will have given you some options. So you can have a mess about with these. So you could go higher fat, lower carb, or you could go higher carb, lower fat. Both will work. It's just down to personal preference. The biggest tip I can give is looking at food volume, because as your calories start to come down, if you can start to volumize your food more, so think of things like salad, veg, potatoes, things that are typically higher in fiber, you're going to get more food for the same amount of calories, which means that you're going to be less hungry. If you can do that as you go through the diet, so you actually start to get more food rather than less, you're going to feel much better as you go. It's going to be a lot easier psychologically to stick to. Within that, you also want to make sure that you're trying to stick to your solid meals, because snacks are never going to fill you up. But equally, you don't have to go with the conventional meals. If you're someone who doesn't normally eat breakfast and you normally start at lunch, then start at lunch. There's nothing magic about breakfast. There's nothing in food timings where if you eat at a certain time in the morning, you'll burn more fat, or if you eat later at night, you will store more fat. If you get hungry later on, eat more of your food later on. If you're not hungry in the morning, don't eat your food in the morning. As long as you hit your totals for the day, wherever in that day, it doesn't matter. It is going to give you the same result. But whatever meal structure you go for, the easiest way to plan that in is going to be to put your protein sources in first, whatever they are, and then chuck a load of single ingredient foods in so that you've got some meals that look like decent meals that you're not going to be starving on. And if at that point you've then got some macros left over, whether that be carbs or fats or just overall calories, put some foods in that you like. But there may come a time where you get later on in the diet and you start to get more hungry that you're going to have to start looking, are those nice foods worth it? Because actually you're starting to get hungry. Would you be better off with the volume? Would you rather have flavour or fullness? Because there are going to be times towards the end where you're potentially not going to be able to have both, and getting that volume in so that you're not as hungry is potentially going to be the thing that allows you to stick to it. But now you know what you're doing with your nutrition, the only other thing to cover is cardio. So cardio is where most people get it wrong, because they try to use it as a way of creating a deficit on its own. But you've heard the saying, you can't out-train a bad diet. And it's true, because it becomes really unreliable. Some days you will do it, others days you won't, because things will crop up. You're not going to do the same amount of cardio every single day. You're going to fall off at some point, and it's probably going to become quite unmeasured. The other thing is, you don't burn half as many calories as you think, because we've looked at how to make a calorie deficit for 1,000 calories. Now, that's quite easy with food, but if you try to do that on, let's say, a Stairmaster, that's going to take me somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours per day. And there is no way I am spending 2 hours per day chained to a Stairmaster. There is no amount of abs that are worth that. We want to use cardio as a way to supplement the deficit. So every calorie you burn is just a bit extra on top. You can do any form of cardio you want. Active calories burnt are active calories burnt. It doesn't matter whether it's high intensity, it doesn't matter whether it's Stairmaster, whether it's running, whether it's biking, swimming. It all burns calories in the same way, just at a different rate. The only thing that you have to be careful of is the more of it you do and the more high intensity specifically that you do, the hungrier you will typically get through the day. And you don't want to be doing so much while you're trying to burn as much fat as possible that actually you're going home from the gym and now you're raiding the cupboards and eating back the deficit that you've just created. The trick is finding a balance where you're pushing hard enough that you feel like you're working towards something, you're seeing the results, but not so hard that you can't stick to it for 8 weeks. And that's the key thing to remember, especially with cardio. You don't have to like it. You're not doing it forever. It's for 8 weeks to get as much off as possible. And it's probably starting to make more sense now why it's just 8 weeks, because it allows us to push that little bit harder. These are the main things that I would focus on to drop as much fat as possible in 8 weeks. So to summarize, a calorie deficit, mainly through diet, but supplemented with cardio and steps. Resistance training, so that as your body fat gets lower, you've got something to give you some shape and stop you feeling skinny. And making sure that you're pushing hard enough for it to be hard, but not so hard that you can't stick to it for 8 weeks. And you might be wondering why I've not mentioned supplements or specific protein sources or things like ice baths or saunas. But honestly, the further you go into it, the more it is for you to get distracted by. If you just focus on the simple things that I've gone through in this video, you will get a dramatic result in 8 weeks. And if this is the kind of approach that you want, but you want someone to guide you through it week by week, show you when to make changes, what you need to focus on, then I have SP8, which is my 8-week fat loss challenge. You can join the priority list to see when spaces go live by hitting the link in the description. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I'll be going through everything that I've discussed in this video, but in far more depth to make sure that you can get and keep a result.